On the morning of May 1st, 1960, Francis Gary Powers, a former United States Air Force captain turned civilian defense contractor, entered Soviet Union airspace in a single-seat U-2 spy plane. The lone pilot soared at 70,000 feet on a top-secret CIA surveillance and reconnaissance mission to capture imagery of various Soviet military sites strewn across the vast Russian landscape. Then, out of nowhere, Powers heard a faint thump, and a bright orange flash flared across his windshield, signaling that the aircraft had just sustained an indirect hit by a Soviet missile. Falling fast, Powers managed to unbuckle his seatbelt, remove the canopy, and hurl himself into the dark abyss. The Russians were already there waiting for him when he landed on the ground. He would remain captive for nearly 2 years until the US negotiated his release via a prisoner swap that took place in February 1962 at the Glenecki Bridge in Berlin, also known as the Bridge of Spies.
Francis Gary Powers, на основании статьи 2 Закона СССР
of the USSR law on criminal responsibility for state crimes to 10 years of confinement with the first 3 years to be served in prison.
The failed mission and subsequent attempts to cover it up, remembered today as the 1960 U-2 incident, revealed the existence of a covert CIA footprint within Soviet territory, and of course, only worsened US-Soviet relations. In 1956, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev warned the world that his nation was making missiles like sausages. Fears of a rising and extremely hostile communist superpower were thus reignited in Washington, and only 3 years after the Russians had conducted their first successful test of a hydrogen bomb. Khrushchev accompanied his warning with a threat to shoot down any NATO aircraft that entered Soviet airspace. Nevertheless, that summer, President Dwight D. Eisenhower authorized the U-2 Dragon Lady spy plane's very first mission over the Soviet Union. The classified airframe had been in development for the previous 9 months under the supervision of Clarence Kelly Johnson, of Lockheed's infamous Skunk Works division. On July 4th, 1956, with Eisenhower's authorization, pilot Hervey Stockman flew a U-2 from West Germany into Soviet airspace. The successful mission proved that the aircraft could safely fly at altitudes above the reach of Soviet interceptors and anti-aircraft rockets. The intelligence collected by Stockman revealed that the Soviets weren't as ready for war as Khrushchev had let on. For one, Stockman's images showed that Moscow had yet to advance beyond intermediate-range ballistic missiles, which were capable of reaching targets in Europe from Soviet soil, but not the United States. Later, on October 14, 1962, U-2 pilot Major Richard Heiser photographed a Soviet SS-4 medium-range ballistic missile during its assembly in Cuba, uncovering Russia's military activities on the island and initiating the nuclear standoff that would escalate into the Cuban Missile Crisis. The U-2 is considered one of the most challenging airframes to fly, and often requires a high-performance chase car to ensure a safe landing. The drivers of the chase car provide the U-2 pilot with crucial guidance, such as altitude adjustments and railway alignments. Only about 1,100 pilots from the US, the United Kingdom, and Taiwan have flown the U-2 spy plane since it entered service in 1956. The U-2's single-seat cockpit would be a nightmare for someone with claustrophobia, and makes remaining focused for the duration of an 8 to 12-hour mission an even more challenging task. Since the pressure suits worn by U-2 pilots don't allow them to flip open the visor at high altitudes, everything they consume must be in liquid form. For that reason, they eat what is known as tube food, which is packaged in toothpaste-like canisters with a straw that connects to a circular access point on their helmet. The liquidized menu options are surprisingly varied. Some are even caffeinated, which does make one wonder when the CIA, or is it Air Force, will team up with Black Rifle Coffee Company to provide these badasses with the proper jumpstart they deserve.